Federal politicians addressed delegates today at the annual Assembly of First Nations General Meeting in Fredericton. But one Northern Ontario First Nation wishes more political focus was on its community. Earlier this month, the fly-in community of Attawapiskat declared a state of emergency over its water quality, just the latest in a series of crises residents there have dealt with in the past few years. Water tests show potentially harmful levels of byproducts created during the disinfection process. Exposure to the chemicals in large quantities over time can increase the risk of cancer. Earlier this afternoon, I spoke with Seamus, Minister of Indigenous Services. He was in Fredericton at the AFN's general meeting. Here's that conversation. Hi, Minister. Nice to see you again. Thanks for making time for us.
Hi, Vashi.
A member of our team spoke earlier with the Chief Gull of Attawapiskat, and he's glad about the commitments he made on Sunday, but he called them Band-Aid short-term solutions. What's your more permanent solution?
Well, the more permanent solution is to build a water treatment center, but you can't do that unless you know where you're building it. And the community's already indicated that the water source that they're currently deriving water from, they're not happy with. And, there's reason to suspect it because the THM levels are so high. And once again, just to reiterate, THM is caused by chlorine hitting organic matter. So it seems to be like there's a lot of organic matter in that area. Not for me to judge it. That's why we have technicians up there as we speak to take a look at that. So, in the short term, what do you do to make sure that people have safe, clean water? You flush out the system. You try and get rid of the THM that's there. You would attempt to talk to public health and make, tell the community, look, I mean, it does require a long time in order to, these negative effects to take hold. But, as I said to the Chiefs in Assembly here in Fredericton, when people are fearful, they are fearful. I sat down with them for hours in that community center and heard everybody who wanted to speak, and they are afraid of their water supply. So we also have to talk to them about that. We've got healthcare professionals up there, for people who are concerned about water exposure in their children, so that they understand, what's really at stake. But I can't reiterate that the water is safe to drink. I drank it myself. It requires a long exposure, up to 70 years before we start seeing those negative effects. But people are fearful, and we got to talk to them about that.
Yeah,
and we have to build a new water treatment center.
I want to ask you about the plant in a second. I take your point on the effects taking a long time, but that fear is very real, and I'm sure any one of us, if we'd be worried about our kids or our parents, any kind of exposure to something that, no matter how long it takes to have that kind of health effect, would be a worry. Absolutely.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, I acknowledge that, and I think it's very real. But I have an obligation, I think, as a minister and as a public official involved with this, to just reiterate the real risks that are at stake. And they are extremely low, but we have to do a better job. There's no question about it. And anybody who's been to Attawapiskat, I think, knows and understands that this is a community that needs a lot more. Not only of better water system, they need housing, and we're working on all of those fronts. And and in terms of the long term, I said to Chief Call and Council and to the community, these are short term things. It's only a Band-Aid if I'm satisfied with it. I'm not. I reiterated that to them. I am not, and we will begin long-term planning right now, comprehensive community planning. They have people who are trained in this. We are going to sit down with council, we are going to sit down with the chief, and we're going to begin figuring out how to handle Attawapiskat, how we can ensure that it grows and prospers.
Yeah, they're worried though, and I think it wasn't meant in a sort of insulting way that it's a Band-Aid. I think they're worried because in the past they have brought up this issue. I mean, they insist that the issue has been known to various levels of government for a decade, and so they're concerned on the ability about the ability of the government to make good on a long-term promise. As far as the water treatment plant goes, what is the timeline for that from your perspective?
We're sitting down immediately to figure out the plan, and as soon as we can, work together on identifying the water source, then we can start talking about what a water treatment center will look like, and we can develop and design it with them. But I'm emphatic, and I told Chiefs in Assembly here about this today. I am emphatic that we will not return to the one-size-fits-all kind of imposed solution from the federal government. It doesn't work. There's no sense of ownership from the community because they haven't, and we're beyond that now in our relationship. I mean, truly, if we're talking about reconciliation and real partnership, then we develop these solutions with community. I mean, it takes a little longer in the beginning, but what results is a sustainable and very real solution.
Does it preclude you, though, from putting some sort of timeline in order to tell people there who are worried about the actual, about whether or not there will be any kind of long-term solution? Does it preclude you from saying, within the next 3 years, there will be something there, we just want to work with you to figure out exactly what that is?
It does preclude me from saying that. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to assume anything. But what I have assured them is that on both fronts, we're beginning now. And on both fronts, short-term and long-term, we are beginning now.
What about money? Is there money to put aside for that? The money that's necessary to build the plant, will that be there when it's necessary?
Yes, I mean $1.5 million, by the way, in order to handle the system as is not only on the table, it is now being utilized. The supplies in order to make sure that this system is up to par they're already in community. So these actions begin now.
Why did it take you almost 2 weeks to get to the community after the initial state of emergency was declared?
Chief and council invited me on the Friday. I was there Sunday.
But the emergency was declared earlier than that.
But I wait for an invitation.
You waited for the invitation?
I wait for an invitation from chief and council. Yeah, we were in touch with them constantly. Once they invited me, I think I was there 2 days later.
The chief said, quote, and this is a quote, "You need to yell and scream and get Charlie Angus to advocate to get any attention." Does he have a point?
Chief and council invited me. I was there 2 days later.
So I just want to be clear, though, because that's what he said to us. I'm not misquoting him. His sense was that there had to be some sort of public pressure in order for you to come, and you're saying no, that's not the case. It was just that you were waiting for an invitation.
They invited me, and there's no question. What we saw was a community that no longer had faith in its water supply, and we saw a community that was extremely upset. And I saw that firsthand. Speaking to mothers, speaking to children, and being confronted by that for I think almost 3 hours. That point was driven home. They made their concerns known in the media. There's no question about it. And once you see a community that is distrustful of its water source, I want to act quickly.
Is there anything you can do to counter the sort of perception that they have that it did take Charlie Angus raising the concern, that it did take, quote unquote, yelling and screaming to get your attention?
I think the track record that this government has had over the past 4 years, the amount of money that we've dedicated towards reconciliation, the amount of time and effort, the priority that this Prime Minister has put on it. I realize that I've only been in the ministry for a short amount of time, but my track record on Kasheshewan, my track record in Cat Lake, we've worked hard to find long-lasting, detailed, costed solutions. I've been on this show to talk about that previously, and I spoke to them about that, and particularly with Kasheshewan, that resonated. And the day after I was in Attawapiskat, I went up to Cat Lake to see those modular homes, to see those new homes under construction, to see a community with smiles on its faces. And that was only in March that we signed that memorandum of agreement with leadership. It meant a lot to me to be in the community with leadership and to be humbled, frankly, that they had faith in me and that we were able to deliver.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you just about one neighboring First Nation, and I apologize in advance if I'm mispronouncing this, Abamatong, north of Thunder Bay. They also declared a state of emergency on July 12th for a similar sort of water issue. On Monday, you said you hadn't reached out to the community yet, but would be in touch shortly. Have you been in touch?
More to the point, actually, their water treatment center, I believe, will be open extremely shortly. They have a new multi-million-dollar water treatment center. My office has been in touch with them, and I look forward to the opening of that water treatment center very shortly.
Sorry, just so I'm clear, is the opening of that center mean that will alleviate the emergency that's in place right now? Like, if that's the solution?
Yes.
Okay, so you will not be reaching out yourself. Your office has.
I absolutely will. I'll speak to Chief myself, no question. I speak to chiefs all the time. I have a very good record on that, and that was indicated today at the Assembly of First Nations. I believe in speaking directly wherever and whenever I can.
And sorry, how shortly will that water treatment plant open?
Very shortly. I'll get you the details as soon as I can.
Okay, thank you, Minister. Thanks for your time today. That's Minister of Indigenous Services, Seamus O'Regan from Fredericton. And after that interview, Seamus O'Regan's office did get in touch with us. They told us that the Abamatong water treatment plant is complete. It will be operational, they say, after 12 more days of tests and checks, and will be up and running following that. O'Regan's office says they expect the long-term drinking water advisory to end by mid-August at the latest. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video. Thanks for watching.